Hi everyone. So remember from last time I showed you how to implement one of the commands or some of the commands in the extensions for Craft, and today I'm going to continue this lesson by showing you more of how the interaction between Craft and Amos Kittens works. So first of all, I'm going to show you the command that we're going to implement and what's the issue with it. So let's go into NetSurf because I have some hot lists bookmark. So in my project file here we have the craft commands md, which md is a document format which is easy to read. So here I have documented all the commands I've implemented so far, and as you can see there's some commands we haven't made any description for here, but I've started on. So this one in particular has the bank, which means we have to check if we have a bank number. This of course is an issue we have to resolve. In the SDK includes we have the kitty Amos Kittens directory, which as you saw, this jumps directly to my let's just do it like this. So this is the public stuff from the SDK, which Amos Kittens has installed itself. It has not installed itself under the include _h because I thought that was more like the system. So we have these header files which are shared between the extensions and Amos Kittens. As you can see, this is actually if you type list Amos Kittens, the Linux command, you will see that these files point to the other place. How do you make sense of this? Yeah, you see this Amos Kittens directory points to Amos core includes in the Amos. So Amos Kittens directory. This is happens automatically when I build Amos Kittens the first time. It creates this soft link to this directory. And your path will be different depending on where you put Amos Kittens. So, or should be. Tell me if it isn't. So, you can also copy the files, but then you have a problem if you're making changes to Amos Kittens. Maybe you are not doing that. But if you are, you will have a problem with the include files not being the same, and then you can have all sorts of problems. That's why I have a soft link between those into the SDK, which makes it easier to have those same files. So let's look at the Amos Kittens.h file. If we scroll down to the bottom, you have the instance, which is the data which is shared with extension, last variable, global variables, last token, token mode, token length, screen, video, default, current screen, sprites, icons, stack, seamless stack, kitty stack, cmd temp, kitty error, token before resume, API, token is fresh, parenthesis count, and git extensions and current extension. So these are important for the extension. We're going to talk more about that later when that's pops up as an issue. But for now, we are interested in this kitty API. So it's a kitty API structure which is contains all the commands, and this has the free screen box, new text window, free all text windows, engine lock, engine unlock, find bank, reserve as, free bank, set error, and dump stack. We will need to use find bank, and this will return on kitty bank structure, which contains some data we are interested in. Most of these are defined in the same .h file, so you can do a search and we will find that this has an ID number, a type, and a start object, and a length. So for some banks, like sprites and icons, etc., you will see that in Amos you have a length like a number of icons in the icon bank, and a length of a number of sprites in the sprite bank. In that case, it's not really a memory bank, it's an object bank. That's why we have an object pointer. So, but for our function, this will scramble memory in the bank. So of course we want to have the length and we want to have the start, and we might want to check that is the right type of bank. Let's minimize this file. It could be nice to have this in the background. Let's go into our project. So this is the string poke. You have to go down. These are implemented, returns the available largest memory, and type returns type of memory from the exec. So whatever is how it's defined in the exec, it will return the same value into the Amos Kittens. So of course there are different memory types for Amigos 4.0 and then there's for 3.1. So yeah. Okay, but really the one we want to implement is the mem scramble and mem unscramble. As you remember, the function that we used was pretty much the same, so let's make this easier for us, because we can cheat. Since it's an XOR function, it will if you run it twice it will unscramble. So but since we are using scramble, you might want to find a routine that scrambles it. It takes 2 arguments, so yeah, you can use this this scramble here. It was pretty much the same stuff we were going to use down there. It's a copy-paste programming, I know, so you might not like copy pasting, but a lot of this is pretty much the same API, so it would look similar for most of the commands. But you have to be careful when you copy paste. That's always an issue. So you copy down here, mem scramble, yeah. So basically, we need an address, we don't need a text string. And to get an address, we have to define, what I like to do is define a character or an unsigned character, depending. Most often it's an unsigned character that we want, but okay. What we do is have to cast the number from the stack to an address of characters, or an array of characters if you prefer. So that's an array of characters is a text string in C programming. So don't get confused by that. It's the smallest units is a byte, and string of text is just lots of bytes ending with character 0. Now, in this case, this was going to be case 3 arguments. This is the case for 2 arguments we are talking about previously. So this is different. So it gets a bit complicated here because we have different. And I hate this because we have break here and return here. You always go to return, so that's very bad because you get the impression that it actually breaks, but it doesn't. So it's better to do return. And this causes some problems because we have basically what we are doing here, we are scrambling memory. So in that case we do not let's see, I will explain later. It just makes it easier. Since in the other case we were modifying the content of the stack, we are not doing this now. This is what I'm telling you about copy-paste programming. You have to kind of read the source code, make sure it does what it's supposed to do, and modify it accordingly. So and you can introduce new bugs by forgetting to do something. But we are always testing our code and making sure it runs correctly. Of course, the problem here is if you pop the wrong number of stack elements, we will run out of stack, and you have to make sure. So I used a trick for this old function, which previously. In this case, we do not want to use that trick, but we do want the routine So in this case, for 2 arguments, we are needing to return a bank. Remember, bank number. I think it's nice to call it a number because, and we do not need to cast for bank numbers. In that case, we will get an a bank, kitty bank from our function, API function, bank. Notice that I do scoping. So there's different set of variables for 2 arguments than there is for 3 arguments. So if I declare them a pair, it would have to declare all the stack for 2 and 3 arguments, even though the arguments are not the same in the different cases. So that's why I scope. I'm also really poor at doing that first. This is you see this one. This is comes from the API and it's dump stack. So because we do not want to dump stack all the time, but that's for debugging. So but you want to use the find bank, and it takes an integer as argument and returns the kitty bank. So yeah, you will notice it says API dot here, and you know that's a macro. So you might have expected something like API, yeah, but it's a macro. So don't worry about it. It's API dot. API means that it's not the same as is written. It's translated. I can show you what it really is, but it's good knowledge to have. So why not? It's a good trick. So but first I'm going to write the function, and then I can show you what the macros are translated to. So back, we will only if we find the bank, as it's probably an error. So I don't know the error number right now. I'm just going to set 22. So many of the errors in Amos Kittens is probably wrong. Should be corrected. When it's going to be corrected, I don't know. Depends on you guys or me or anyone that reads the source code. Test, make sure it returns the correct error codes. I don't think so this one takes bank start, and bank length, and -1. That's because the scramble from start address to end address, and that includes also the last address. And length is will be 1 byte too much. So we are not going until the length. It's it's when you have an array, you start from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if the length is 10, it's 0 to 9. So this is why we don't want to add 10 to this one, for example. We want to have 9 if the length is 10. That's why we are -1. So basically we're doing here is saying scramble this, and we could do something more with this function. Personally, I think this function is this command is a bit weak. If you look at the documentation, it says bank, but we could theoretically take the start address and until character 0 as well. So you have an option, either the bank number or address. Some of the Amos commands are already doing that, so you can choose. So if the bank isn't found, it's an address. Basically, how that would work. But for now, the documentation says it's only a bank, so we don't need to worry about it. And this is very similar. You see, it's a start and address, and yeah, and this means it's very easy to do. We need 3 arguments. We're reading the arguments first in our function. So there's the current stack, the previous stack, and the stack before. That's the -2. We know where the stack is large enough because we have calculated our args. The args are the number of red arguments, and so long as we have collected enough arguments, we can collect the variables from this. You will notice that I'm using standard functions which assume this is the number and string and so on. We could check for if it really is a number, and if it really is a string, and so on. That's possible. We of course make the assumption that the code is correctly written, and but you could check the type for each, and sometimes it's required to do so, just saying. But if it's not required, we do not need to. So it's the text row 2. It's not a -1 because it's including. This one is removed, and password is just passed in as this. So that should be it. You might want to check if this is the right type bank, but let's just do it like this for now, and yeah, not worry about that for now. Now, what else? We want to unscramble it, and as you can see, we are unscrambling it. Unscramble is the same function. Takes the memory address or the bank and runs the same routine, scramble. Since that function has a double function meaning here. But if we're going to do it correct, if we find out the algorithm for scrambling and we do it correctly, we have to split up, because then you can't have 2 functions that's calling the same routine. Then you have to have different routine for the different commands. So but for now it's simple XOR encryption, so we can just use scramble. So what I did with scramble was basically I had this code here, and I wanted to use it other places and other routines, so I abstracted that and made another function for it, so it made it easier to call from anywhere. That's where it comes from. Yeah. Let's close it. Make. We have an error or a warning. Yeah, I like to, when I see warnings, I like to fix those warnings at once, if I can. So basically, this address is on char, and this is easier to get an integer. You have to cast from integer to character point. This is the problem here because Amos is 32-bit and all the integers in Amos are 32-bit. So I guess I'm not sure how that will work with a 64-bit OS, because when I code C programming, I do it on Amiga OS and mostly on 32-bit. I did it code a bit on Linux before, and that was also on 32-bit. So there are probably some issues that will need to be solved or figured out if you want to port to a 64-bit Linux distribution or R64. So yeah. Of course you can make all the integers 64-bit. You could do that. Something tells me that this would make things slower, at least on the PowerPC, because it's, if you load in the values, it has to load those values in for several steps. While when they are in the memory or in the registry, you don't need to worry about it. But it's because the length of an PowerPC instruction is always a max 32-bit, and that means the instruction consists opcode and operand. So it means that you have even less space for your data in the instruction than you have for because of the opcode. So the operation code. This is the part of the instruction which tells the CPU what this is, what type of command. I'm sorry about that. I do digress often, and have not a lot of knowledge that not necessarily is relevant for what you're going to do, and but that's yeah, I'm geek, right? That's it. I'm not good at like give you portions. I'm not an educator, so excuse me for being throwing stuff at you that you do not need to know, or not at this time. So yeah, it says it's updated, it says it's installed. We have to test it. Let's fire up UI. As you can see, the UI window is a lot larger now. I'm running a smaller resolution, and I hope also Amos Kittens will look better than it did previously, because the resolution and the scaling, because it's scaled down. So I decided to record a 720 video instead of downscaled 1080 video, and I also hope the audio is going to be better now. Now that it doesn't need to downscale it. So there's no mem scramble stuff here. We have the scramble and scramble. We can use the unscramble. I think that is the most appropriate thing. So it wasn't. I wonder if did I write something like Yeah, I think I did a mem type, which is nice because I have reserving banks already here, and I can just fill them with text. I think there's a in Amos, and this is just a normal command. So there's the fill command, which I think is for doing this. So the fill command will fill an array in memory. Just have to figure out how to use 282. Now this book is almost completely falling apart, but I think it's very nice to have things in book form. It's just so easy to look up, particularly in the old manual, which I'm using the most, which is probably a bad thing because I don't know about the new commands in Amos Professional. I used the So we want to find the address of start to finish and pattern. It tells us. So the interesting in the Amos example is that it's S to S, and it also says length, and it's not -1 in here, so I think it's I'll have to check the manual. Finish. Yeah, between start and finish, it's not including finish. That's so this is, so it's basically S to S plus L minus 1. The fill command will do according to the documentation. We have to assume that is correct. So we were just going to use an ASCII value like when I think about it, this is pretty bad. Let's do str poke, since that's the. I wonder what difference is, because we have poke star in Amos, so I don't really understand why they implemented this one. But let's say and it's always nice to terminate the string with a 0, since that is this the C standard and we want to do it that way. Maybe we want to have the text in a different, because then we can do and then we can find the length of the text and etc. I think that makes sense. So since the commands are so similar, why not use the bank number to scramble and use the let's do that. Let's do mem scramble 10 and try 6 characters. Let's make a password. So our password is password, as always. Now, if we extract the string from the memory, we will probably let's do that in a loop. Oh no, we can use shard dump. Is it shard dump? Maybe it's shard dump. Yeah. Let's do shard dump. S and S plus L. And this should produce an output from our scrambled text. We can print also our original text. So we can compare. Let's go in here and type save as mem scramble.amos. It's like this. I think it's just have to have a return value here. Yeah, that is. Okay. Out of variable space. It should check the documentation. I have the documentation here, so very nice. It's a lot faster to work with my own documentation than it used to. Oh no. That was stupid. Yeah. Okay. Should be a find function here, but yeah. And this is why it's better to use stuff like this, I think. Okay, shard dump. Yeah. Convert memory block to ASCII string 0 to 31, 128 to 159, strike to 46. So that's not very good documentation. It's a string function, and again it's shard dump, so it's address and length. That was what I was going to check, because just update the documentation. So let's go back to this one. So this is the writing. It should be 6 characters, and it should be able to dump the stuff. We are not dumping printing it, so that's the problem. Okay. Okay, so it's scrambled. Okay. So we need to unscramble it. Let's try the other command. Unscramble. Unscramble, and as we know, it's from the start address. And then it's to the destination address, and this time we have to take -1 because this function is including 2 and I think it's the 2. It doesn't say in our documentation if it's the 2 or not. I think, yeah, it's 2. It says in the documentation, yes, which is the end address, and that's different. It's not until. So that's what the problem with the consistency in programming languages is, that when you don't know if it's until or including, and the documentation doesn't say what it is, then you have to test to make sure it does what you expect it to do. And the documentation is what I call bad, because it has misinformation. So we are now unscrambling it, and then we can retrieve with shard dump again, which is another craft extension command, and we can take out all the 6 characters. We can then, and the unscrambled version is Amiga, so we know it works. Let's save, close. We have a test case. We can go to our Amos Kittens project, and we can go to test, craft, and memscramble.amos. Oh, really interesting stuff. So here we have a bug. So this is the mem scramble. So what I think happens here is it executed before it has collected all the arguments, which is some problem in our Kitty Craft project, and I know pretty much exactly what the problem is. Again, it's one of those things you have to be careful about when you write code and copy paste code. Yeah, since these commands do not return a value, this should be normal. They just scramble memory, right? They don't have and do not return value. So let's try again. Note if it crashes, if you do something bad in the library and it crashes, the OS cannot unload your library. And so that means you have to reboot. So don't make mistakes in the code. Yeah. So we are extracting something strange here because we have a I don't think that happened in the original, that we have the dot here, or I hope this will look nice on your screen, and you can also see why I decided to do the graphics like I do. Now that we are recording it with 720p, it should look crisp on your end. If it doesn't, it's probably due to the compression. I can't do much about that. But okay, we are getting the result, and I'll look into the bugs I have here, because it should the dot should, in my option, should be not there. But actually, it should be there, because it reads 6 characters out, and character 0 is translated after the documentation of shardemp. So yeah, I think it's actually correct. It's just looked strange that it doesn't look the same from output from input to output, but yeah. So yeah, we have now implemented those functions, and we have now asked for a bank in one of the examples where we actually so yeah, ask for a bank, and let's get rid of that one. So we're asking for an Amos bank, and we got the address and the link of the bank, so pretty much done. I will do maybe some checking to make sure that you don't use it on sprites or icons. It's not necessary. I don't think it's really necessary, but maybe check that we have an not on. Maybe the best thing to check is that we do not have an object. Actually, that would be the easiest, because there's so many different types of objects. So yeah, maybe that's the easiest way. Probably what I should do. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you guys learned something today, and about the API, and how you find the commands that are available in the API, and how you call those things. And yeah, there was something I was telling you I was going to show you how what the macros actually do. So so when I compile this, we cases see this line. So what it does is it compiles the object. If you type in minus e here, and we take the output to RAM, and we call this text.text, it should only use the precompiler. And the nice thing about that is the macros etc. is translated, so there's no if you go to see the errors now, it's translated to the instance pointer to the API, because there's the API in the instance, and then there's the error. So so if you look at the extension craft, this is the original, and this is what it actually is compiling. So there's some difference between what it's written and what is compiled. So the preprocessor is an advanced text replacing tool. So this will replace things, and as you see here, version. That was also a good example. Version, revision, version 53, revision 1, just replaced from version to 53, revision to 1. And if we go up here, too far up. Yes, here. So we just let's look at that part again. The macro is changing this to instance and API. So I was, as I was telling you about the structure of the instance, which contains the API and the commands which is provided by Amos Kittens to the extension. So this is how the extension is able to run routines from Amos Kittens, and this is how the extension is able to write to shared data between Amos Kittens and extension. So yeah, that's all for now, and I hope you learned something. And also I would also point out that using the .e option, if you have strange errors and etc., it can solve many problems that you do not find, because the markers could hide the stuff that it's actually doing. So yeah, you just use that. Yeah, this one I think is very interesting. It's cast the void star and returns. Okay. So you learn a lot from inspecting the output here, but okay. Yeah, have a nice day, and please enjoy the video. Bye bye.